right, thanks for joining us today. And this is the maiden voyage of doing Frugal Tech Live's Business Computing Weekly on a PC, because I've been doing it on Macintosh for the last several years. And it's basically I've loaned my Mac Pro to my wife. And so I'm making do with a Dell XPS 8300 that I bought in November. And so far, my thoughts about the machine have been pretty positive until the point that I added a third display to the computer. And essentially, just to let everyone know what's going on, I had bought it with a slightly upgraded video card, the ATI Radeon HD 6770 video card. Now, this is a video card that does support ATI Infinity technology and will support 3 displays. However, apparently the power supply that Dell gives you with the XPS 8300 does not. And I found this out working with Dell technical support. Now here's the bottom line, what's going on. With 3 displays attached, I'm getting frequent flashing of the displays. Some will shut off and black out for a few seconds and then come back on. The computer no longer respects going into power saving mode for the displays, and also the screensavers don't work. So it's a whole myriad of problems once I attach that third display to the computer. Now, I've been working, of course, when you call Dell technical support, a lot of times you're going to end up with a India-based call center, especially if you're buying the consumer grade equipment from them. I don't know so much about their workstations and servers. I'm assuming that that's more US-based support. However, I did get a pretty good support rep on the phone. We went through making sure all the drivers and all that were current and up to date, and they were. And so a couple days later, as promised, they called back and said that they had spoke to AMD, and AMD had said that when you're using 3 displays with the Radeon 6770, that the power supply that Dell used was too small. And they were then going to put a larger power supply on the bench there at Dell, and because they were able to replicate the issue. They hooked up the 2 Ultra Sharps and another 24-inch display, and sure enough, they got the same problems. So they're looking now at upgrading the PSU on their end, seeing if that resolves the problem. If it does, they're going to send a technician to the house and upgrade the power supply in the XPS 8300. If that doesn't work, they're going to offer a full refund on the computer and return my money on it, which is not a scenario that I would look forward to, but that might be necessary. We don't know. Where's your Dell with 2? I don't know if you're talking to me. I'm looking at the chat room right here. Yeah. They're talking back and forth. At any rate, that is kind of what's going on with the XPS 8300. And if I do have to return it for another PC, what do you get? So I've kind of keep that in mind. I think the answer is pretty obvious. I think I'll just get the Queen a new Mac Mini, bring back my Mac Pro, and call it a day. Although I don't have a problem with Windows, and you can see I think the video works better with the webcams, obviously, in Windows, because the software and the software component of webcams seems to work better. The video, we're using Logitech C910s for Cam 1, and of course here's Cam 2. So we're using 2 Logitech C910s for that, and we seem to be getting really, really good video out of that. So I'm pleased about it. Better than I get more control, obviously, because of the Windows drivers and the software with on the Windows side. So I like that. Although Wirecast still does not support HD webcams, and but all in all, it's not been a terrible experience. And I've got a certain workflow that I'm pretty much living in a Windows VM all day long, every day anyway, and I thought this would be a better way to go. Time will tell. Hopefully we'll get the video display situation worked out. So CES begins well, I think Steve Ballmer does the keynote address Monday, tomorrow at like 6:30 in the evening. I want to say Pacific time. I'm not sure about that. But essentially, the show kicks off next Tuesday. And some of the big news at the new show is going to be Visio. And if you're not familiar with Visio, they make a kind of a low-end HD TV. That's how they got started, the low-end HD TV business. And I own one. I have a 37-inch Visio. It's 720p. You know, it's not the greatest TV set in the world. It does what I need it to do, and I got it at a good price. And but they're getting into the PC business. Well, here's the interesting thing. What makes this really interesting is two things. One, they say they're going to sell PCs much lower than anybody else can. Why? Because, well, they got a company. They're going to be making all-in-ones and laptops. That's what they're going to be making. And they got Foxconn, which, you know, if you're familiar with Foxconn, they make and assemble the iPhone, etc. They're going to be getting parts and equipment from Foxconn in an equity stake, and thus able to sell these computers for a lower price. Now, here's what I think is even more interesting. Let's take a look at a couple photos of this products. Here's the first one coming up. Does that look vaguely familiar to anybody in the chat room? Does that look vaguely familiar? Take a good look at this thing, especially look at the keyboard, look at the trackpad. Kind of looks like a Macintosh and iMac, doesn't it? Kind of favors that a lot. But let's take it one step further. How about this? Look familiar? Does it look like somebody might be copying Apple? Still not convinced? Let's try this. Does that not look like a MacBook Pro? Mulder Tom says it look in the chat room says it looks like an HP, but what line of HP? Probably an Envy. Apple is not going to be pleased about this product line at all. And I'm sure that the proverbial, you know what's going to hit the fan when these models come out. And so we'll kind of see what happens there. Got a comment in the chat room. Not really fair for tech. That's like cars copying Ford Model T. Yeah, there is a lot of thin laptops out there. Exactly. Hey, there's Miner. How are you? Thanks for stopping by and joining the show. This Visio, this is what they're coming out with. They're going to introduce these models at CS. They're going to be selling them cheaper. And as I understand it, they will be coming out, I want to say in June is the planned launch of these things with the Ivy Bridge processor line. And they're going to undercut the budget computer makers because of giving equity stakes in the company to parts manufacturers. Is an interesting thing. Is this a race to the bottom? Just when you think it's hard times in the budget PC business, here comes Visio with even lower prices. Is this a good business plan? I don't know. Copying Apple, that's not smart. You know how litigious Apple can be. You probably have all seen where there is a company that's starting to sell Steve Jobs action figures, whatever you want to call them. Apple is already trying really, really hard to keep from those going on sale. So we'll see how well Apple defends against these machines. Kind of an interesting thing to look at. You know, here's something I think is very, very interesting. We've all run into this if you're a Windows user and on Windows machines, install an application and that it can totally bomb your computer. Don't you wish we were beyond that, where just the mere act of installing and running a desktop app, provided it wasn't designed to do so, could actually make your system unstable and unusable? I can't believe we're not away from that point in time. Not only that, what do a lot of Windows users do routinely? They reformat, reinstall the OS and their applications. Some people do it really religiously, like once a year or more frequently. Well, Steven Sinowski, in his Building Windows 8 blog, has announced two, or I should say, it's really one new feature, but a enhanced and easier way to do exactly that within Windows, and it's called refresh and reset. And now here's the key difference between the two. In the refresh mode, Windows will keep your personal data, your settings, and so forth of Windows, and do a clean install, and then basically do a reinstall, kind of like a repair install of Windows, minus your applications. You will have to reinstall your applications again if you do a refresh. Okay, which is going to drive, because of goofy Windows activation on Office, just creates more problems than I like to deal with. And then there's Windows reset, because we tend to give computers away, sell them, whatever. You got to do it with an OS. Nobody wants a computer without an OS on it. So there's a mechanism in there. So these are advertised as features, and it's just, really, shouldn't we? I mean, I get the reset. I get that totally. But the refresh, why can't we be beyond that now? Why should we have to, as a matter of good practice, wipe the drive, reinstall the OS, and do a complete fresh install? Why can't we get above and beyond all that? I don't understand it. But there you go. That is a new feature that's coming out in Windows 8 called Reset and Refresh. Comes straight off the Building Windows 8 blog from Steven Sinofsky. Thought I would share that with you. I think it was kind of an interesting topic to talk about. So, I want to tell you all how I became a GoogleSoftie. What do I mean by a GoogleSoftie? I am using Google Apps with some hardcore Microsoft tools, and I found a way that works for me to integrate them all together, but I thought I would be remiss if I didn't discuss Microsoft Office 365 and kind of tell you what it is in a nutshell. And I've kind of talked about it very little over the last year. It was actually launched out of beta in July or August of 2011. But essentially, it is a hosted version of Microsoft Exchange, SharePoint, Link, what's called Link, which is a beefed up version of the Microsoft Instant Messenger, paired together in a subscription plan. Now, bottom line is for you, there are two basic plans, okay, with Office 365. One is called Professional and Small Business, and the other is Enterprise. There is a third for education. We're not going to talk about that today. So there's basically two. Now look, here's the critical thing. Well, a lot of companies don't understand. If you start off with the Professional, there's not a path to take you to the Enterprise. So you need to pick the right one in advance. Okay. Within those two perimeters, Professional, there's the plan P1, as they call it, and it starts at about $6 a month. To that, you can add an add-on called Professional Plus, and what that does is it not only gives you Exchange for your email, and it gives you Link, and it gives you SharePoint, but it also keeps you in an annual subscription to the Microsoft Office software. So you can download Office 2010 as a subscription, and you get that in the Plus. That is an add-on in addition to the Professional Plus. Now, Professional Plus and Small Business is meant for organizations less than 25 users. You don't get as much mailbox storage space, I believe, and also you don't have Active Directory integration, although I understand Microsoft may be beefing that up somewhere in the near future. Anything else that I think is relevant on this plan? Oh yes, well, you don't get with the basic subscription to Professional Plus, you don't get the client software, the desktop version of Office, rather access to the web-based versions of Word, PowerPoint, and OneNote. So those applications are web-based. How do those compare with Google Docs? I think Google Docs is simpler to use and has most of the features most people will need to do their job, unless you really need hardcore formatting as well. But I tell you, I'm a GoogleSoftie, so I'm going to be talking about some of the better points of Google as well. You also get a website, by the way. You can also, because here's how it works. Here's how Office 365 works. When you do the professional and the small business plans, they will host your DNS records. And part of that is you can have your own website, a public-facing SharePoint template-driven kind of thing. Not a big fan of that idea. There is a way to let another hosting service host your website, but it's kind of a convoluted way of thinking. No matter what you do, you got to move your DNS. Microsoft's got to host your DNS records. That's just the way it is, especially or with the professional small business plan. Hey, user 834, how are you? Let's just take a minute and visit everybody in the chat room. There we go. And we'll just change shots a little bit. And also, I'll just bring on the lower third here, bring that up so people know what you're watching. So this is the professional and small business version of Office 365. Now, let's go ahead and talk about the second plan. This is the one that Microsoft really wants you to have anyway. And that's their E plan or enterprise plan. And the enterprise plan kind of works like this. There are 4 plans to choose from when you go with the enterprise. I should say there's 4 different kinds of subscriptions within the enterprise plan. The E1, E2, E3, and E4. Most people are going to fall somewhere around that between the E1 and E3. I don't see too much people using the E4. Okay, so what do you get with that? Well, essentially, there is some email archiving, although I've not found a lot of data about it. But essentially, you're getting a 25 gigabyte mailbox, just like you would with the paid version of Google Apps per user, which is huge. That's a hell of a lot of email. Look, I've got 70,000 messages in my Google Gmail all mail folder. 70,000. And I'm using 2.5 gigs of storage for 70,000 emails. Can you imagine then, by a factor of 10, that'd be almost 1 million email messages that I would store. And this is just all kinds of stuff. So it's huge. It's a huge, huge thing. So you get that. SharePoint Online, Link Online. Again, access to the Office web apps. You can get SharePoint Online. But the $10 is the most basic subscription fee. So the subscription prices run this way. Plan E1 is $10 a month. E2 $16 a month. E3 $24 a month. And E4 $27 a month. The major difference is that with the plans E3 and E4, you get a copy of Microsoft Office Desktop, which would be an add-on on the plan P1, Professional Plus. Now you can add that Professional Plus to the E1. Am I confusing you? Good, because that's what the hell I intended to do. Because the average person sitting down and looking at this thing, in my opinion, would go, this thing is a freaking abortion. How the hell do you figure this thing out? It's very convoluted. It's very complex. The question is it good? And I'm going to answer it this way. If you're already in a organization that's a big-time Microsoft user and you already have experienced people that know SharePoint, not too bad, but you're going to need somebody who knows what they're doing to move you over to Office 365. This is not for the casual person to do, or the guy that's kind of doing some of his own IT stuff. You really are going to need a consultant to get you moved over to Office 365, and it really does integrate deep with Microsoft Office. In other words, to be quite frank with you, the Office 365 is a hybrid solution between cloud and on-premise software. We're going to talk about that and a whole lot more when we return after this brief message. Be right back with more Business Computing Weekly.
GFI Software provides a single source for networking, security, monitoring, and hosted IT solutions for small to medium enterprises. GFI's extensive suite of award-winning on-premise solutions includes anti-spam, email security, email archiving, endpoint antivirus, centrally managed backup, event log management, server-based faxing, network monitoring, removable device control, vulnerability scanning and patch management, and web filtering and security. GFI also offers a suite of hosted solutions including email security and continuity, frontline email defense, and monitoring and remote management. With award-winning technology, an aggressive pricing strategy, and a strong focus on the unique requirements of small to medium-sized enterprises, GFI Software can satisfy your needs on a global scale. Please visit us online at www.gfi.com.
And we're back with more Business Computing Weekly. So there are, by best calculation, approximately 11 different ways to purchase this thing. If you choose the wrong one in the beginning, you're going to have a big problem in the future as well. And quite frankly, it can get very, very expensive at $24 because at $24 to get the copy of the Office desktop, you're close to $300 a year for a subscription to this thing, versus where I think you're going to get most of this functionality through Google Apps for $50 a year. So there's a big, big difference. But there's certain Microsoft products that I really like. I use their CRM product called Microsoft Dynamics. Been on version 4 forever, I swear, for a long, long time. Even though 2011 has been out a year, I have it hosted. The hosting company, I won't name them, but they really, really suck. And so I'm going to be moving from hosted CRM 4.0 to Microsoft Dynamics Online, hosted by Microsoft. And we'll be doing that over the next 30 days. But I live in a Google Apps world, but yet, once you start using Microsoft products, they really, really like to have things like Office there, for example, and Outlook especially. But yet I'm using Google Apps. How do I make all this work? Okay, here's the secret sauce. I set up Outlook. It has to be, I have to make it my default email client. There was no way around that. I'm working with Google Apps through IMAP, which is not perfect. It's not without problems. The IMAP connection times out from time to time. That does happen. And it can be rather slow, especially if I go in and look at a folder called All Mail. I'll get this refreshing the cache a lot. That is problematic. But other than that, it works okay. But what about contacts, calendars, and tasks? How would I sync those with Google Apps? Now, if you have the paid version, there is a Microsoft Outlook sync tool. I'm not using the paid version. I'm using the free version, free for up to 50 users here. We're grandfathered in. You can get it for 10 today. So I'm not paying $50 per user per year right now for up to 50. I'm not paying a thing to Google, not a nickel. But what I did find was a product called CompanionLink, CompanionLink 5. And I installed that application, and it allows me to sync my contacts, my calendar, my tasks with Google. Okay? So I've got everything syncing between Outlook to Google back and forth, and it works brilliantly. One with exception that you can only have one task list in Google Calendar or for tasks. If you have, I had like 2 or 3 different task lists. That's a no-no. But just one seems to work just fine. Well, how do I get that to work with the Microsoft sort of thing? Cool. So here's how I do this. I have a connector between Microsoft CRM and Outlook. And the two then begin to work together. So I basically can be in CRM, schedule an activity, a phone call, a task, what have you, an appointment. That then will sync to Outlook. In turn, once every hour, the CompanionLink will pick this up and sync it to Google. And that's how it works. And so far, with the minor exception of some very minor data duplication on a calendar item, and only a handful, it seems to be working okay. So that's how I'm doing it. Microsoft. So Dynamics becomes where I create a contact, or Outlook, either one. I create a contact there, or activity, a task, whatever, in CRM, and then I sync it, or it syncs every 5 minutes. Yeah, every 5 minutes to Outlook. And then CompanionLink then picks that up and sends it on to Google. And of course, all that data is there on all my mobile devices, etc., because they're all syncing directly with Google. And it works really, really well. And now, how much is CompanionLink? Is it freeware? No, CompanionLink is not free. It's $14 for a 3-month subscription to it, or $50 for a lifetime subscription. That's the route I'm going to go. I'm going to get the lifetime subscription and call it a day. So I'm saving a whole lot of money by doing it this way. But yet, what about the docs side of things? Glad you asked. Because a lot of people say, here's our big problem. Here's why we like Office 365 and all that over Google Docs. Is because of fidelity, issues based on fidelity, preserving formatting, etc. in your documents, whether it's a Word document or they say, well, the Google documents are too underpowered for our needs. We need Excel. I get that. Excel's a brilliant application. Guess what? Google provides a free downloadable tool called Google Cloud Connect, and I want to talk about that just briefly. And what is Google Cloud Connect? Well, in a nutshell, it is a plugin for Microsoft Office 2003, 2007, and 2010 that allows you to share, edit, and collaborate on Microsoft Word, Excel, and PowerPoint documents, store those, and synchronize those with Google Docs. Very, very cool, and it works brilliantly. It keeps track of revision history, etc. Okay? And that totally shoots down the argument about using Google Docs and losing fidelity and that kind of thing, because it preserves everything in the Microsoft world. So now you can have it both ways. You can use Microsoft Office in its entirety. That's Outlook, that is Excel, Word, PowerPoint, but yet still have Google as the back end, and it works. And in my case, for an organization up to 10 people, it'd be totally free. I already own Office, so no big deal. Okay. Of course, you could use OpenOffice, LibreOffice, etc. as well. Or you can use Google Docs. There is no software to buy. But in my case, I already had Office, and a lot of people have a copy of Office. It doesn't have to be the most current version of Office. But there I have it. I'm running a hybrid, but not the Microsoft hybrid, but rather a Google Microsoft hybrid. It works great for me, and I'm still using Outlook. I'm still have my calendars, contacts, tasks, my notes, all that in Outlook, but yet they're being transferred up to Google Apps, and I like that a lot. And it works for us, and it's easy to do. And so the Google Apps, less than 10 users or less, free. Google Docs, free. That's all free. Google Cloud Connect, free. You can get a tool from Google called Calendar Sync, which is free as well, but it won't sync your contacts with Outlook. So all this stuff I'm not paying a nickel for. What I am paying for is CompanionLink, $50, one-time deal, lifetime license, I'm done. So I like that, okay? If I go the Office 365 route, okay, I'm going to be looking at a minimum, because the P plan, the professional plan is too iffy. So you're really looking at $10 a month per user. That's $120 a year per user minimum. And the max functionality, I'm really in the neighborhood of about $24 a month per user. So I see where I'm saving a whole lot of money on this. And that's what I wanted to share with you today in this week's edition of Business Computing Weekly. Check it out. Office 365, I'm not saying it's a bad product. I'm actually a licensed or a approved reseller of the product, and in certain cases, a little bit of the old Business Computing Weekly juice, aka coffee. In certain circumstances, it's going to make a lot of sense. In others, not so much. Dump truck is fast. Dump truck is fast. Well, anyway, that's this week's edition of Business Computing Weekly. Thanks for stopping by. Make sure you join us again next Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Want to make sure everybody knows that we're going to be doing a political show called Mainstream.tv. We're going to be starting that up in February. It's all about you guys. That show is all about you guys. We want to get everybody's opinion and jump in. You know what? It's time that the two extremes quit getting all the coverage in the media. We want to hear what ordinary people have to say about the scene in Washington. That's called Mainstream TV. That's going to be starting in February. Join us again next week for another edition of Business Computing Weekly. I'm Bruce Naylor, your host. We'll talk to you later.